welcome to Combat Thoughts. I'm Robbie.
I'm Lee.
And I'm Alex.
We're going to take a deeper look at the culture and philosophy behind martial arts. Gareth, thanks for coming on, mate. So, what we normally do, we just talk about people's martial arts history, how they got into martial arts in general in the first place, and we'll just riff off different topics. I'm sure we'll touch on, I don't know, there's a few bits, why Muay Thai is cool, probably touch on CTE and shit like that. But really, we'll just riff through like your history in the sport and then find a topic that's interesting and go off that if that suits you.
Yeah, that's cool. Everything's cool. Everything's cool.
Fuck it. All right, Gareth. First introduction to martial arts. Where did it all begin?
I suppose my very first was Enter the Dragon. I was 5 when I first watched that, which a lot of people will probably frown upon because that's not the kind of thing you should do with your kids. But my dad was cool. He let me watch stuff like that. Yeah, there you go, you know. And that was it. I fell in love with it from then on. Watched everything. Literally, there's probably not a martial arts film I haven't seen, and I've been that way my whole life. I had a dabble at karate when I was a kid, but we moved house quite a bit, so I kind of didn't get to keep it up that much. But that was my initial introduction, and then I always had a bag, and whatever I'd see on a movie, I'd go out and try and practice on the bag. It didn't always go well, but yeah, I tried. I did try it, and yeah, that's kind of like where.
Did you have the nunchucks?
Yeah, I had foam nunchucks. My brother bought me. Thank God they were foam, so I'd probably fractured my skull about 8 times. But yeah, that was kind of my initial.
That's funny. I that's like a proper. I don't know. Like that's like a real sort of stereotypical like archetype thing. The fucking Bruce Lee influence and getting into it that way. It always amazes me how sort of culturally pervasive he's been.
Oh, I mean, without him, realistically, I don't think we'd be as far along as we are, especially MMA, all of that kind of thing. I mean, the one of the opening scenes from Enter the Dragon, I think, was your first sample of what MMA could be. Where him and Sammo Hung, when they're dressed in the pants and they're kind of rolling around and the arm bars him and taps him out. I mean, I think that was probably one of the first introductions you ever got to it without realising it was an introduction you got to it. Obviously, until the Ultimate Fighting Championship started, and then people started to get interested just because of how crazy it was.
I think it was also like Enter the Dragon was also like one of the first proper martial arts movies, right? It was one of the first times. I mean, one that became so successful, and I know that, for example, my dad, who was born in the year when it was made, he watched it when he was a kid in the cinema, as they still showed it in the cinema.
Yeah,
it came a bit late because it's communist Poland, but he couldn't believe what he was seeing. You know, it was kind of it was something that people haven't seen before. So I can see how that. So how old were you when you saw the film?
I'd say it was a video. I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I said before, be frowned upon these days, showing a child something like that. But you know, my dad was cool. He let me watch that, and then it kind of went on from there. Fist of Fury, Game of Death, and then you know some of the crazy B movie classics, and I just never stopped. Just loved every second of every film.
So was he a fan? Was he a fan of martial arts movies as well? Is that kind of how it translated to you?
I think Dad probably liked the violence. That might have been some of the appeal. But yeah, he quite liked him. He'd sit there and watch him with me. Yeah.
What was I saying? I think we were about to get on to like your first actual martial arts experience. Maybe you said about the nunchucks. You said about the bag.
Yeah.
And then you moving around a lot.
Yeah. So we there was a karate class I lived in Bitton at the time. I was about 6, I suppose. And obviously through being in love with it, that far back, there wasn't really the diversity in clubs and things that you've got nowadays. So it was kind of karate and to a lesser extent judo, which wasn't as popular, sadly, which is still a fantastic martial art. But yeah, went to karate for a little while. I got a couple of belts. Got embarrassed once. My trousers come undone when I was trying to high kick and pants fell down. And so everybody laughed at me. So I was a little bit uh, subconscious about that. I can remember having to spar with the sensei. And again, it's not like things are now. He was a lovely guy, but I didn't really know. I'm young, and so I'm kind of lunging at him and trying to have a go at him. He just kept turning me, sweeping me, and it was a wooden floor, and I sort of lost my temper and went for him, even though I was only 6. But yeah, so there was no control back then. There was no control, but it was great. It was great. I loved every second of it. Loved every second of it.
So where did it take you from there? So you got started real young on the actual martial arts.
Yeah. From there was me and a couple of friends. They were going to, I believe it was Pac May in St Mary's, because you had a few things down there. So they'd come into school and start showing me what they were learning in there. And some of it still stuck with me. I can remember the first kata and things like that, even though I never went. Sort of started getting into that side of things. Taekwondo for a little while. I tried out. I enjoyed that. I did enjoy that. But I suppose I didn't really. I mean, I was 18 when I had my first kid, so everything kind of got put on the back burner. So, yeah, it was quite difficult. I had a lot of jobs and I was doing a lot of things, so I didn't have a lot of recreation time, shall we say, which is cool. It's not a problem. You know, you got to do what you got to do. But I suppose I didn't fall deeply in until I came across Thai boxing. That was in my 20s. Finally, when I found that, and I only went along because a friend of mine wanted to go, and he was too nervous to go on his own. So I said I'd just go with him, and then he never came back, and I never left. That was pretty much it.
That's funny how things work out. I had I don't know, I just assumed you'd been Muay Thai for life, or at least, you know, since your teens or something. It's a lot later than I expected.
Yeah, no. Well, I say again at that time. I mean, when I came across it, when I found the gym, again it was through a friend, and there was nothing else. There was no Thai boxing in Southampton. There was no anything like that. He was the first guy. He started in London, Sangha, and he opened Nemesis Gym. I don't know if you remember that, Rob. We used to do inter clubs with him and stuff. It's like our sister gym, and they're in Erith.
Yeah. I think I know him.
Yeah. But lovely guys. So he started in London when he first landed, and his girlfriend was from Southampton, and then he kind of migrated down there. And Nemesis carried on. The other guys took it over, carried it on. Then he came down here and started teaching here, and that's kind of where I came across Sangha. And Dean started 3 weeks before me, so we'd already been there 3 weeks. And Dan as well. Dan was there. There's a lot of old faces that used
So
to be
this
there.
is what year?
Oh crikey! I've got to think now. I'll have to go. Where does it go backwards? Hold on. Now what was I? 23 years ago, maybe 23 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
I like this. This is a whole, like, because Dan's been very influential
Oh God,
on
yeah.
definitely mine, probably on Alex's training as well, especially through university. This feels like I'm picking a whole, like, origin story for us.
Oh God,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you had there was Dan, there was Ed. A lot of these guys you might have met. But Ed, great lad. He'd had a couple of fights for Sangha. There was Vin and Van, two Vietnamese lads that they were great to train with because they were it was 150,000 miles an hour and full power or nothing. They were just great guys, great lads. There was some real characters, definitely.
And what was the training like back then?
Hard. It was hard. I literally couldn't describe it in any other way. He was junior Lumpini champion, Sanga, and he'd been training, as far as we're aware, since he was about 7. And when we met him, I think he was early 30s when we met him, and I think Dan will probably be able to confirm this. I think he'd had in the region of about 300 fights. And
Wow.
yeah, he was a tiny little guy, like short, legs like tree trunks, absolute tree trunks. And he didn't speak a lot of English. His wife always translated for him. She was lovely. He was lovely. They're both lovely. But the training, it wasn't pleasant. I'll say that in the least. It wasn't pleasant.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because he was Thai, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. We associate Thai training, at least nowadays. Maybe this is what has changed over years. We associate it with being fairly playful. Of course, it's hard. It's taxing on the body, but like in terms of, I don't know if what you're talking about is more general training, or if you're talking about the sparring. Because like I would associate Thai sparring with being more playful and less damaging to the head.
No.
No.
I suppose the best way to describe him was old school. He was old school. So everybody sparred, but me and Dean, he wanted us to both to fight. I mean, I had my first fight 6 months after I joined. And I was about 15 and a half stone when I joined, really overweight, really unfit. And I fought at 85 kilos, which is 13 and a half stone, and I was ripped, absolutely ripped. I was living on like leaves to get down to the weight, because he didn't muck around. There's some quite, I've got a few stories. One in particular, Dean leading up to Dean had already had one fight, and it was a few weeks later, and I was going to have my first. He was going to have his second on the same show. It was the Equinox Club in Leicester Square, and it was for Sean Toomey. Sean, and he told us, no sex before fight at all. Leading up, no sex. Nothing. I was kind of like, okay, if that's what it takes, then fair enough. Dean didn't listen. And this particular day, Dean had come in, we were all doing pads. I was feeling quite good. Dean was a little bit off. Not massively, but just not quite his usual self. And it's the only time I've seen Dean with his tail between his legs. Sanga was holding pads for him, and he stopped, dropped the pads, and he went, "You have boom boom?" And we're all looking at each other like that. And Dean's like looking at us, and we're like, "Don't." And he went, yeah. And he just went, get out now. Dean like head between, walks off out, and it was like, Jesus, fair enough. I'm glad I didn't. He was not happy. But it's like, in the weird way, it was like amazing. He knew. He just knew, and it was like, Christ. You didn't want to upset him like that, because when it comes to, he'd spar with you, so we'd spar with each other, he'd spar with you. But things like clinch work, Thai clinch, I hated having to do Thai clinch with him. I hated it because he wouldn't go away. I can remember picking him up by the elbows because I couldn't get him off my neck. Picked him up by his elbows, and I threw him over the other side of the ring. Like, took everything I had to do it. He landed and just went, walked forward and grabbed me again, just swept me and put me up in the air. And it's just like, oh God, no. It was so strong. Like, obviously, we were still learning the clinch, but so strong, such a solid base. It was just like trying to pull a tree around. And I probably outweighed him by about 4 stone. Just couldn't move him. unbelievable balance that they have.
So how did your fight go? Your first fight after
6
6
months
months?
in, yeah.
It wasn't too bad. It was okay. Sort of started. Obviously, we've been hard sparring. Sparring was hard between me and Dean. It was just 15, 16 rounds, and we were trying to kill each other. And it didn't stop. Dean will attest to that. Dan will attest to that. It was literally you were trying to kill each other for every second of every round. And it started, and none of us had done any sparring without shin pads. So you kind of trying to condition your shins with the sticks and all that kind of things, trying to get into it. And we come in, we had our first little move. He threw a big kick, and I checked it. And I had never known pain like that in my life. It felt like someone had set fire to my legs, and I completely lost. Everything went out the window. I just went nuts and went running at him, throwing, trying to and then we just kind of had it for 3 rounds. Both exhausted by the time we literally spent a little bit, as much time as we could. He was as tired as I was, bless him. He was a lovely guy. I talked to him afterwards. We back off for each other, and we just both stood like that, almost like, please can the round be over? Please can the round be over? And then we had a little exchange, and I can't even remember doing it. I've got it on video upstairs somewhere, I think. And I threw a hook, like an offhand hook, and clipped his chin. I think it was more because he was tired than anything else, and he just dropped. And then when he went to get up, his legs just went, and then the ref waved it off. Thank God. Yeah, the ref waved it off. But,
Pretty eventful. I
yeah,
like it.
he was a lovely guy, absolute gentleman. His corner were quite mean to him afterwards. It was a shame. I felt quite sorry for him.
And for sure, something to note is that your first fight was immediately like basically a standard Thai fight with no shin pads, no headgear, none of that.
No.
You just straight in, went in and had a basically what I guess what you'd call a class A, right?
Yeah. We no elbows. We're allowed to elbow.
Okay, so
Class
no
B.
elbows. Class B, yeah.
But I think it's because it was our first fight. It was his first fight and my first fight. I don't think you're allowed to dive straight in to Clark, but you might have been able to back then, to be fair. But now you're not allowed to. You've got to kind of go through the stages. I don't think you can dive straight into class, A class. But yeah.
How did you feel about the fight afterwards? Were you pleased with how you did, or like?
I'm never pleased with how I do.
Okay.
Ever. I'm my own biggest critic, and I always will be. Always will be. It wasn't, but it could have been flawless, and I'd have found a problem with it. I'm my own worst enemy. I'm my own worst enemy.
And so, did you want to get back in there to just kind of like fix it to do better next time, or were you hesitant to?
Wanted to obviously wanted to carry on fighting, so we went back to gym, carried on. Dean fought same night at the same club. He fought just after me. He had a fight there, and a load of guys from Nemesis, they were all fighting there as well. So, like I say, our sister gym, we knew them all. They're a great bunch of lads. But the next fight, by the time it came round, it was almost a year. Because I think we were no. That's what happened. Sangha packed up and went to Thailand. He moved to Thailand with his wife and decided to knock it all on the head. And Dean bought the pads and took the rental of the area over, which at the time it's now Spartans gym down by St Mary Stadium. And it was called Millbank. And we were up above there. We used to share it with Wayne Batten, boxing coach, great boxing coach. He's got some great pro fighters. So we'd share the gym with them. And then basically we took over the gym with, I suppose, we had been trained, but it was kind of minimal training. So we were still learning as well. And Dean took over the whole thing. I was kind of second. So when the beginners and everybody came in, I'd train them. And then when I got them to a stage that they looked that they might be able to fight, Robbie's seen this, then he'd go, you're with me now. You're with me now. And then I'd never see him again because then they were in the ring and then they just get brutalised until they were tough enough to fight. That was just how we were trained. That was how we were trained. It was, you know how to kick, you know how to punch, you know how to check, you can grapple, but the primary thing was you have to be able to take a beating.
You went very quickly. I love that that's the criteria, but you went very quickly from not having done Muay Thai to running a Muay Thai gym. Why was it that? Because you'd done a few martial arts before, so obviously you got
Yeah.
a bit of experience in it. Firstly, the first thing I'm wondering is what was it about Muay Thai that really like got you? Like, why Muay Thai? Like, why didn't you start like a anything else gym? Like, you were clearly into it from the go.
Oh well, for me, the fact that Dean was willing to do it initially, and we didn't want the gym to close. We loved the gym. It was like it was everything to us. We were there almost every day. The guys that we knew were there every day, and we didn't want to lose it. So I mean, fair play to Dean. Primarily it was Dean. I didn't have any money. He bought the pads and stuff off, took it over, and he just started to, he's quite astute. He's not silly. He knew that he could make it work with the amount of people that were coming in, and so we did. But Thai boxing, I've always loved Thai boxing. I think it's in the nicest possible way. It's the violence. There are not many stand-up sports that you can do the stuff that you can do in Thai boxing, the way you're trained. I loved everything about it. I loved it. It was a bit difficult. I loved it was hard. I loved it. It pushed me. It made me better in myself. I think I was looking for it, and I found it. And yeah, it changed my life. Definitely changed my life.
Because I guess that set you on a course. Because it feels like was Luk Barai established at this point? Was it a term you were using, or
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that
yeah,
come around later?
yeah, yeah. No. It was already looked Barai through Sangha, because he was from the province of Borai, and it's
Okay.
yeah. So I can't remember what it's actually Lock, not Look. It got misspelt a few times.
Yeah, I've been mispronouncing that for years.
Yeah, no. But most people have. Most people have. But it's Lock. It always was Lok, Borai. But yeah, Borai's the province. Any of the guys that have gone out there to train, I know loads of people have gone out there to train, and I've got it on my leg. Look, Borai tattooed on my leg, and some of them have got it on their arms and stuff like that. And they say Thais will always stop them and say, "Oh, look, Borai," and start pretending they're Thai boxing and stuff like that. Just random people in the street, so they're obviously aware of the province at the very least. I think it was only a
Yep.
small town. It was only a little place. But yeah, so it was. I mean, Sangha fought over here. He fought. I can't remember who it was now. He had one or two Thai fights over here with English fighters before he sort of
Ah.
decided to call it a day and move on, because he had to have nose surgery from too many elbows, and his nose kind of bent out there and then bent back in. And to have the surgery, he was well. I know you could just go and do it, but he was told he would never be able to fight again, or they wouldn't perform the surgery, because they knew if they'll perform it, fix his nose, then he'd go and fight again and get it broken again. So it was kind of like he made the decision to not do it. But to be fair, I can remember asking him a couple of times. I think we all asked him a few times. Said, look, why don't you still fight? As things are, as one of the few Thais in the country that are running a gym, you wipe the floor, I would think, with all of the English fighters. And the way he described it, he just was saying, like, my body hurts. It just hurts. And I don't want to do it anymore. It was kind of like, okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
That's quite sad, but also I have to be honest. From every story you've told me about how he trains people and how he trains himself, I'm not surprised.
No, 100%, 100%. It was quite brutal, but in the same breath, I mean, you've already had Dan on the podcast.
Yep. Yeah, he was one of our first guests, actually.
When Sangha left and kind of that Dean took it over and we were all doing our things, me and Dan used to meet up on a Saturday and or Sunday morning, and he'd hold pads for me. because I was trying to train for another fight, and I didn't get a lot of time to train because I was teaching more than I was. So he'd meet up, and obviously as a trainer, he's phenomenal. He's an absolute gentleman, and he's a wonderful guy. But initially, if you ever ask him, some of the things he used to make me do were like, let's have a go at this. And it literally was like, you look back at it and you're like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best idea to have done that. I mean, I'd have run around the block with a 20 kilo weight plate, run round doing that, round like probably half a mile block. Obviously, your arms start to get tired, so you start cracking it on your head as you're going around because you couldn't keep it up. I ended up wearing like a Benny hat to try and take the weight off when it was hitting my head. And then we dropped that, and then he'd jump on my back, and I had to run around the block with him on my back. Just some really absurd things. But we were experimenting, we were trying. We didn't know, we were.
Yeah, you didn't have Google, you didn't have YouTube.
No, I mean back then, like I say, there weren't. I mean, the close you couldn't find Thai boxing fights anywhere unless you got DVDs. And the closest thing you had to watching anything like that back then was Eurosport, and it was the K1 scene, heavyweight K1 scene. Mark Hunt and Ernesto Hoost and Remy Bonyaski, all those guys. And it was only on about once a week if you could get the chance to see it. But, you lived for that, just to get the opportunity to see what those guys could do. And again, it was still reasonably basic. I mean, a lot of the moves, like the Dutch combo, Hoost Dutch combo, left, right, left to the body, right low kick, it's still your bread and butter now. It's still used well, but yeah, honestly, there wasn't much. I can remember me and Dan watching one of the first UFCs, it was videos back then, getting the video and sat watching the video, and you had the guy with one boxing glove and no boxing glove, and
oh yeah,
I mean, it was insane watching it again. Now you think about what you're watching then, it was just kind of like, but again, it was just like, it's violence, it's amazing.
That's what we want.
Yeah,
But
that's what everyone
that's interesting. That's interesting because I mean, I was going to ask that question. I was going to ask, in that age, and from what I understood, so Dean and you kind of started around a similar time.
Yeah.
And Dan as well. So you didn't once your coach went, you didn't really have someone of like a senior stature in your gym with knowledge.
No.
So how did you expand your knowledge? Where did you try and draw information from, or was it more like you said, just like experimenting?
There was a lot of experimenting. There was trying to watch any videos or fight videos, breaking people down, watching combos, the way they did things, and then trying to perform them and making them part of your pad work routines and things like that. It literally really was suck it and see, if you like. We all had things like I think Dan describes it best. He used to say, between the three of us as trainers, his term was, he said, if we were serial killers, from the movies, not just normal ones, from the movies, Dan goes, he'd be like Michael Myers, gentle, quiet, just going through doing that. I think I was Jason Voorhees and Dean would be Rambo. Like full bore, 25 machine guns, taking everybody out. Like softly. It's you're getting it done, and we're going. I don't care if it hurts. Get up, get on, and get it done. He's always kind of kept. He has evolved massively. I'm not saying he hasn't, but it's always been that whole. You got to be tough enough. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's developed, but I am seeing the influence and the early days of Dean bleeding through, but also of Dan, like you just mentioning him jumping on your back. I mean, that's still the sort of conditioning he'll get us doing in the classes. He's still got us doing that kind of shit.
Yeah, oh god, no, yeah, 100%. But like I say, at the time, we didn't really have a clue. It was just kind of like, let's try this. Let's have a go at this, and at the end of the pad sessions, we'd then try doing UFC, like having like UFC sparring, we didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue. Didn't know how to wrestle. Didn't know anything about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We didn't know anything. But we'd sort of start sparring and then just try and like bundle each other to the floor and be rolling round, not having a clue. But again, we were trying. We were trying.
Yeah, I kind of, I think that's it's somewhat of a downside of today's state of affairs, where information is so readily available, and
Yeah,
there are tutorials, and the right ways to do things are all available everywhere. Everyone can see how to do things.
yeah, yeah,
What ends up happening is you you do end up just copying other people, and there's no real your own, like, you don't bring anything necessarily new to the sport because you're not innovating yourself.
yeah,
I mean, not saying that it happens completely everywhere and that's the case now forever, but I think there is a very cool element to what you're saying, that you guys didn't have any really, like, you were watching things and you were trying to sort of copy those things,
yeah,
but you were also just trying things out for yourself,
There's a
yeah,
certain
which is,
romance that's kind of been lost with
yeah.
all the information, and so everyone knows the right thing to do now, kind of, but
yeah.
not like it was.
Well, like I say, a lot of this. I mean, even some of the stuff I still do now. I mean, obviously my class, I do privates, but my class is it's Thai boxing. Was geared more towards fitness, not to take away from Thai boxing, but in the other sense, for me, it was kind of like, well, you could have the best punch in the world, you could have the best kick in the world, but if you can't do it for 9 straight minutes, well, 9 minutes, 3 rounds, you're screwed. You've got to be fit enough to be able to do that, Tom. So you're doing this class. There's going to be a hell of a lot of fitness involved in this class, and it's no different for the fighters or anybody else. It wasn't picking. It was always, you've got to have the cardio to be able to do this, and then everything comes off the back of that. If you haven't got the fitness to get through a round, how are you ever going to have a fight? And again, don't get me wrong, not everybody wants to have a fight, and I expect it to, but a lot of the people that come to my class will never have a fight, but they just enjoy, I suppose, listening to me scream and shout.
So yeah, so okay, so now, so you've had your first fight. You then had, I guess, a second one, but you're basically opening the gym and so on.
Yeah.
So how does that then progress? Are you still fighting after that? What's the sort of progression from that point onwards?
Well, I had my second fight. Dean had kind of completely stopped and just turned to training, teaching, and we started getting quite a few good young prospects coming in. I still wanted to carry on and have another one, which I did, uh, which didn't go particularly well. The second one,
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't great because we obviously we'd lost Sanga, so I was probably Dean's first ever corner, and we would sort of again bundling our way through. We knew roughly what we needed to do, but I think most people, even if they had coaches, were in the same boat because again, Thai boxing wasn't what you see now. It was quite basic, quite still route one, and I kind of got out there. I was ready to rock and roll, and we said like what we do. What I used to do. Second the bell went, I'll just go steaming out. That was it, and it was hell for leather. And we said, right, what we do, we'll sit back for the first round, and we'll have a look, and we'll feel him out. Not that we knew how to feel anybody out, but again, we'll see what happens and take it as it goes. He came out like a bullet at China shot, which I wish I would have, because I think I'd have beaten him. But I backed off, and literally the first punch he threw, I was wobbled straight away. I didn't know what was up, what was down, left, right, and that continued for 3 whole rounds. I literally didn't know what I did. I barely knew where I was. I barely knew where I was. I was concussed for maybe 2 days after. I had. Nobody ever took any photos. on my kid's life, I had through the gloves, I had knuckle prints in the side of my head, there and there, where his knuckles had come through the gloves. You could see his fist marks, both sides of my head. My lip was split open. My leg was black from hip to ankle, completely black.
Oh, jeez.
It wasn't that it was particularly great. It was just that I was gone. I was gone. But the only thing I took from that was I stayed on my feet the whole fight. He never dropped me. I took a hell of a beating, which I know is not great. But the ref stopped it in the end, right near the end of the third round, because we kind of gone into a clash and we both fell over like a grapple. We fell over our own legs. I got up and I was still like trying to see where I was going, and the ref said, "Are you all right?" And I can remember all I can remember is going, "What?" Looking at him, and then he waved it off, and it was kind of like, okay. So kind of like I think I've had enough anyway. If I'm fair, I spent the rest of the night giggling. I couldn't stop. I don't know what had happened in my head. I just kept giggling and laughing, and I couldn't control it. The closest I
Kind
suppose
of
you could get to is
delirious.
being like completely stoned out your face and whiting out.
Mm.
I didn't know what was going on. I literally didn't know what was going on. And looking back now, yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but you know, it kind of is what it is. It wasn't the end of the world. But sadly, that was pretty much it, because then everything got pushed so much towards the gym. It's kind of like there is no time to train. There isn't time to do this. We had these new guys come in, Rich Harding. They just come in. What was the other? Was it James? I can't remember the other lad's name. It was that long ago. I can't even remember their names now. But we had a handful of lads come through, and they all won Southern Area titles, English titles, and it kind of flew. It just took off, and then the gym was packed, and yeah, that was about it. It was kind of the end for us. But in the same breath, you kind of like, well, I was in my 20s, mid to late 20s at that point. Dean's only a couple of years younger than me, but it was kind of like you can't do both. You can't do both. So I've seen the MMA shows and stuff.
Mm.
Coaches that are coaching the fighters, but they're also still trying to fight too. And it's probably not all the time, but most of them I've ever seen do it lose, because I think it's too difficult to do both. It's probably possible for some people, but I think it's too difficult to try and dedicate so much of your time to you, but so much of your time to everybody else as well. So I think there comes a point you've got to make a decision, and I miss fighting. I had more fights after that in some other stuff, but I enjoy training people. I do enjoy. I like watching somebody come in that can't do things, and then months later they can do a lot, and a lot of things they didn't think they could do. It's nice to watch people evolve, and yeah, it's good. I love it. I absolutely love it. Always will.
Did you find did you find that you enjoyed training people to be fighters, or in general, getting the sort of everyday Joe, let's call them, and getting them to start Thai boxing and getting good at Thai boxing? Do you think there's much of a difference there?
Um,
Um,
it it was. I think I always preferred newbies, people that had just come in that weren't that enamored with the idea of fighting. They just enjoyed training. I think I preferred them. Not that I didn't like the fighters. Like I said, we kind of did it. I'd start them off, Dean would take them, and then that was it. I wouldn't see them. Well, obviously I'd see them, but they're gone. They're gone. They're with Dean now. So
Not
mm,
yours anymore.
yeah, I concentrate on them. I bring them through. Dean takes them the rest of the way. Dean's a fantastic coach. He's got, without blowing his trumpet, he's got to be easily the best Thai coach in the country. And that's not just because of Mo or any of the other guys. When you talk to Dean and listen to him break down a fighter, I've never heard anybody be able to do what he can do. Genuinely. Mo fighting Manichai. Were you there for that, Rob?
Yep. I
Who,
am
who
really sad
genuinely
that I
thought?
wasn't.
I mean, who genuinely thought, as good as Mo is at that stage of his career, that he could beat that guy?
Hmm.
We all
Yeah.
loved him to bits, but we were scared stiff for Mo.
Well, I mean, in fairness, Manichai is a big fucking deal,
Yeah,
and I'm not going to name names, but I did hear some shit talked about how Mo was going to get absolutely smoked,
yeah.
and I'm really sad that I didn't go. But I seeing everyone's reaction, seeing the result of that was fucking fantastic
Um,
to watch that.
it,
Like
it, it
I've
was
just yeah.
it was up there with some of the best nights ever. It was just incredible. Like I say, I can remember it was me, Dan, Dean, and I think Joe, and we were kind of all in his corner. I remember Mo come in, done his bit, and manager came in, and I can remember turning to Dan and going, "Look at the size of his fucking legs! Jesus Christ!" It was kind of like, "Oh my god!" I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't confident in Mo. It was just like Mo had, I don't know, maybe 30 odd fights at the time, 40 fights, and this guy had over 300. And
Yeah, it's
he
always
was
the
just a
thing with ties, isn't it?
monster, and it was just like, oh my god, oh my god. But I mean, he lapsed a little bit in the middle round, and allowed him to start grappling. He got swept quite a lot, so he probably lost the middle round. He knows that. But the first round, I mean, there's some combos that they worked on, and again, all in Dean's head. Dean made the combos up. There's one you can watch. He lines him up. He's up against the rope. He kind of does a jab, cross, low, and then jumping scissor knee right under the chin. And you can see him do it. You see Manator's head go back like that and back again, and he does the whole time as if to say, but it's kind of like, nah, that hurt you, that hurt you. That's a that's a that's the fighting pride thing. Yeah, no, no, no. Yes, it hurt you. Yes, it hurt you. And then in the end, I say finished it. They tried making out that he hurt his leg. So you see him go, and he's holding his leg, and he wouldn't get up, and it was kind of like it was a right hook that dropped you, mate, not your leg. But they tried making out he'd injured his leg. But it was like, whatever. You got smoked. End of. Just
You know what, that kind of being able to look at a fighter and be able to um, pick them apart in such detail that you could
yeah,
craft something in the gym beforehand, that is a special skill, and I have fuck all idea how to develop it. Like, strategy wise, I think I'm good strategy wise. I could be
yeah,
like, you should focus on this area of your game or that area of your game because they struggle with these against this sort of size of opponent. But to be able to get the kind of granular detail where you go, take a UFC example,
yeah,
to know that Michael Bisping needed to throw that left hook against Rockhold because he would drop that hand after certain combinations.
yeah,
Um, or the way that DC picked apart Stipe the first time and knew
yeah,
exactly what to do. I am baffled about how people can look at fighters and get that kind of information out of it. It's amazing what Dean and people like that do.
yeah. It just it doesn't seem to matter who it is. It, within a couple of minutes, he's already pointing out what he does, what he repetitively does, what you could do, and then that's it. He formulates a plan straight away. What you need to work on. One of his little tricks as well is Dean will exasperate something that they can do. Like this guy's got a really quick lead head kick, but he'll get into their heads like it's like a billion miles an hour. You'll never see it. It's that quick. So that they're kind of like already getting ready to start to dodge, and he'll emulate the moves within the pad work. But he kind of makes it worse so that when it happens, it isn't as bad as they thought it was. But they're
Mm.
still prepared for it, kind of thing.
What,
But
like putting
yeah,
putting weights in your gloves so that when you actually do it, you do it 10 times faster.
yeah, that's one of mine actually. I like doing that. I do that myself
All
still.
right.
I'll put weights in my gloves and do it. I like stuff like that. I mean, the Mo's pet hates the weight vest. So he's got to wear the weight vest weeks and
Yeah,
weeks before the
I
fight.
know he hates that thing.
Oh, it's you just see him. He's like, oh. but it works. It works. I mean, you know, he won again the weekend just gone, didn't he? He's a real talent, a real talent. And well, I hope he continues to go the way he's going. He's been up there for a long time now. But yeah, you know, got a good few guys there. Ginger's done all right. Jordan, he didn't do too badly. I thought he won, but sadly, because they did tie scoring, he lost on the tie scoring, I thought. But I thought he had much better of the fight than the other lad, but sadly tie scoring is a lot more.
Tie scoring is mysterious and seems to favour whoever the judges want to favour, in my books.
Yeah, and depending on who the kind of like they were up in Scotland, line fight I think it was, but they'll have their own individual set of rules, and these places in London will have a slightly different set of rules, and they'll have a slightly different set of rules. It never seems to be like a blanket. This is how it's going to be. It's kind of tweaked, like with K1. You know, you can't two-arm tie clinch, but you can single-arm tie clinch. Some people will let you hold on and not let go. Some people say you're only allowed to run one knee and you've got to let go. And there's, every one you go to, you're kind of like, what is it this time? But they show their rules. You just got to play by it.
So I've got to wonder, what's your opinion on that kind of training style that you had since the early days? Because it seems like it got you all ready very quickly.
Yeah.
But also, I've completely forgotten the old coach's name suddenly.
Sanga.
Sanga does seem to be quite beat up from it. Do you think that kind of training style is needed? Do you think it's good for someone to do, or what's your opinion on kind of like that level?
Not anymore. I say it definitely. I've changed my mind. Dan, as you know, has as well. We've had many conversations about this. Certain ways you train and like sparring. I don't agree with heavy sparring anymore. I think it should be nice and light, nice and quick. You know, like you see Senchai at his gym and the guys sparring, that kind of thing. The whole kind of catching each other, like, hey, got ya. And then you'll try and get him back. And, you know, you just can't, you're trying to work rather than just, and everything's, you know, we thought we were getting somewhere then, but you kind of weren't learning anything. I mean, my boxing coach helped me massively change my mind about the way I'd always fought and sparred and everything else. Completely changed my mind. It helped me massively. Like in that, but that was I was in my 30s when I boxed. But yeah, he changed my mind and made me realise that yeah, you might be able to take a punch, but did you know you don't have to? Like,
yeah,
I
I found it myself that, you know, if I'm being a bit more playful, if I'm not if it's not super heavy sparring, first of all, I can think of combinations and things much better, because I'm not like just worried, shit, I'm gonna get like bopped in the head and it's gonna, you know, hurt. So like I can be a bit more interesting with my combinations and try different things, which I think that's one thing that you miss if you're doing heavy sparring, is you don't tend to try things, so you
no
don't
experimentation.
then figure out if they're going to work or not.
Yeah, 100%. No, you're right. Because like I say, the second you start, it's it's a male ego thing. I think power matches power. They hit you hard, you want to hit them harder. Then they'll try and hit you harder. Then, and before you know it, everything's gone out the window, and you're just trying to like lever each other's fucking heads off. And again, what are you learning from that? Nothing. There is nothing that you are going to get out of that, other than at the time thinking, "Cool, cracked him good in there," or he cracked me good in there, or there's nothing to learn there. Nothing to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that you end up looking to survive more than you look to develop your skill set in
Yeah,
sparring like that. And it extends beyond Muay Thai to like jiu-jitsu as well. Like I'm not going to
Yeah.
try weird submissions and different types of guard if in competition, and I'm not going to try it if my only goal is to finish my opponent. I
yeah.
feel like you need that blend at least. But
Oh,
do you think
definitely.
it's but do you think it's important for people to have that hard sparring as well?
Um,
And if so, how much and when?
well, we've always tended to. I mean, it's a lot. It's a hell of a lot softer than it used to be. It is a little bit more tap tap, and that kind of thing, which is good, and it looks good, and everyone looks controlled. They look like they know what they're doing, which they do. But you know what I mean? It's not some kind of slugfest. But then we'll get, and again, you may well remember this, Rob. We'll get other gyms to come and to sparring sessions. Nemesis will come down sometimes.
Hmm.
The lads from Bournemouth will come down sometimes. That's when it starts getting a little bit tasty, because that the pride kicks in again. People from other gyms, and it is that whole like, here we go kind of thing, and then it will start upping slightly, and yeah, that's when you get like those kinds of ones, and then obviously the inter clubs that we do, we take the fighters to the inter clubs. We have our own inter club sometimes. I mean, that's the inter club's about as close to a real fight as you're ever going to get. To be fair, again,
Mm.
I think I'm pretty sure you've been to them. You might have even fought with some of them. I can't remember, but yeah, just
Me, not with Luke Barai, but I've been to a few interclubs of my own.
yeah, but they're not exactly friendly, are they? Well, afterwards perhaps, but
No.
at the end of the day, you are trying to win. You are trying to win, and us as coaches,
Mm.
I'm one of the worst. Uh, it is kind of like, of course I want you to win. If I'm calling you, of course I want you to win. I don't want you to go in there and get filled in. I want you to win, and that's not by any means possible. But it's you know, I want you to know what it feels like to get to do this, and to get to feel like your arm's been raised, and even if that's all you ever do and you never ever fight again, it's it's a that feeling you get, just even if it's just once,
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
yeah, it's I mean,
Mm.
it's not everybody's cup of tea, so I'm not advocating it for everybody, but yeah, and it's so much more popular now. I mean, not just Thai boxing, MMA, just it's just exploded. Cannot believe how huge it is now, and how quickly it's happened. Just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I guess you were able to see the development of the sport of Thai boxing in the UK, from its sort of, I guess, early stages, right? Because I guess when you started, there wasn't really. It was kind of, I guess, the Master Sken, Master Toddy times.
Yeah,
So like Muay Thai was arriving in the UK,
yeah.
um, at the larger level, and now we have Yokkao, we have Lion Fight, um,
You
we
used to have
had
Super Fight
Muay Thai
Series.
Grand Prix. Yeah, like there are many organizations,
Yeah,
and it's quite interesting to see how the sport is developing, and there are so many Brits that have also gone to Thailand and fought Thais and been winning. Like we've had Dan McGowan on our podcast, who's fought in Thailand many times.
wow.
Um, so it's yeah. What how have you seen the development? How and where do you perhaps think it's going? Is it's just getting bigger and bigger?
It, it's, I think the explosion in MMA, sadly, Thai boxing's always kind of left behind, even though it is big in the country now, and it is doing very well. And K1 the same. Well, it's not there anymore, but Glory, fantastic, some incredible fighters. One Fight Championship have done a great job, because now they brought Thai in. In the nicest possible way, I actually prefer a One Fight Championship to the UFC now. because you haven't just got the UFC style fighting, the MMA. You've got
The MMA.
the MMA gloves, Thai boxing, normal Thai boxing. There's a bit more variety. I like that about it. You get to see some fantastic fighters like Nongo, just some real class fighters over there putting their thing about. But it just, I don't know. Thai boxing, I think, will always sadly be the bridesmaid, never the bride. Just, it's there, but like I say, boxing will always be huge. MMA is now just ridiculously huge, and it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. But Thai boxing now seems to have it's one of the tools you need to go and do that, rather than this is something you want to do. Again, it's much bigger than it was, but it almost sometimes feels like it's a means to an end, rather than something that people really do want to have a go at. I mean, I'd love to see it explode like the UFC, but I don't know. I don't know.
I wonder why was it that K1 was so popular? I guess it was partly because it was like in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Some of the fights, but like K1 was really popular at one point.
Yeah, that was huge.
But then I guess UFC wasn't really mega popular when K1 was popular. So perhaps like MMA has started to overshadow.
Oh God, yeah.
And we can't get back to that point where kickboxing or Muay Thai is at that same level. It's kind of overshot it.
I think. Oh yeah. I think people have been drawn towards MMA because I think people are bloodthirsty. They like, but, if anyone's, you say like, oh, did you see that fight? Did you see that fight? More often than not, I say, oh my God, did you see that? See all the blood? Did you see his nose? Did you see his eye? Did you see his lip? Did you see his ear explode? And it's just like, that seems to like be what's attracting, I suppose, like fans, if you know what I mean, like people who are not involved, that don't go to classes, that don't do. They want to see the blood. They want to see the gore.
Yeah, we call them casuals.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they want to see. They're not there looking at it like you or I would look at it, even though you might still enjoy it. They're not looking at it like we're looking at it, And it's cool. It's cool because it's done great for the business as it is. But yeah, just and I kind of lost a little bit of love for the MMA side of things. People like McGregor have ruined it for me. I cannot stand him. But each to their own. A lot of people love him.
That route.
Yeah, just each to their own. I've never been a fan of trash talkers in any sport at all. I've never been a big fan, and it's a shame that it's the mouth that makes the money, not the skills. There's a lot of great fighters that have missed out on opportunities because they're not that way inclined, and that's a bit sad. But I suppose at the end of the day, all people care about is making money. So it kind of is what it is. I mean, someone like Dustin Poirier at the moment, I don't know if he's getting a title shot. I think he should have had one a while ago. The way it's gone, but again, he's a reasonably quite nice guy, and a lot of the time it just doesn't fit with what they're looking for. So, but yeah, it is what it is.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.